let's go back to our first image there. Does the image look hazy? Looking at how the shadows, highlights, and midtones interact with each other, would an adjustment give more impact to the image? And would a selective adjustment in levels illuminate the subject better? Alright, I already mentioned that I'd probably like to lighten up his face just a bit, so that would be a selective adjustment that I'd make. The image does not look hazy, so I don't need to do anything to correct for haze. And looking at how the shadows, highlights, and midtones interact with each other, would an adjustment give more impact to the image? I'm not sure, so I want to play around with that a little bit. So questions I need to investigate a bit. So I'm going to go ahead and do a new adjustment layer for levels. And right away I look at my curve and I notice that I have a little clipping in the blacks and a little clipping in the whites. I'm not surprised by that. So let's go ahead and see what happens when I pull this in a little bit. And pull the whites in a little bit. Okay. And just to see how it all interacts with each other, I like to play with this slider too, the midtones. Usually, as a general rule, I don't like to go more than a 0.4 adjustment with this slider because you can lose details, especially if you get brighter with it. So just playing around with it, seeing what I like. Actually, kind of like the midtones being just a little bit brighter. Kind of brings out him just a tad more. Okay, I like that. So I'm going to go ahead and stick with that adjustment. And then let's talk about that selective adjustment for his face. So we're going to go up and make another adjustment in levels. Okay, this time just look at what's going on with his face. Don't worry about the rest of the picture. Okay, just dial this up just a tad more. We don't want to go too far because, again, we already have an adjustment and the additive qualities could take away some of the lines and detail in his face. So I just want to be really subtle, just bring out just a little bit more in his face and his eyes, and a little bit of detail on his hat. Okay, so brought it up just a tad. Let's go look at the layer mask here. We're going to select that, and then we're going to press Control if you're on a PC, or Command if you're on a Mac, and I to invert that mask. When it's black, our adjustment doesn't show through. But when it's white, it does, and anywhere it is white, the adjustment will show through. So we're going to paint in where we want this adjustment revealed. Let's go ahead and grab our paintbrush tool. We want a very soft brush, and if you scroll down just a bit, you start to get to the soft brushes. We want it a pretty good size. This looks like it'll be just about right. And let's look at some other things. We want normal mode. Okay, all of this looks like it's set the way I'd like it. Alright, and just want to make sure that the layer mask is selected, and it will be outlined if it is. And then we can start painting with white. So we just want to come over and check our colors. The default color arrangement is usually black over white, and so you can just hit X to swap them, or just set them appropriately so that you have white on top. And then you can start painting in your changes there, just where you want them. Okay, it's already really subtle. It's probably hard to even see it, but let's go ahead and change the visibility just a little bit. You can see he's got a little bit of light there. Now I want a little light in his hat too. Just sort of makes it look like maybe I had a reflector on him, even though this was far too fast for me to do anything of the sort. Okay, now once again. Alright, now I like to dial the opacity of these things down just a little bit, because even though I see this and I think, wow, that looks awesome, it's usually too much. So I usually take this down to somewhere around 30 or 40. So I'm going to try that and see what I think, and it's just a subtle difference highlighting in here, and that seems more realistic to me. Very, very subtle. Okay, I'm satisfied with that, and so let me go back to one of my last questions here. Oh, actually, looks like I had all of my questions for lighting, so I'm ready to move on to my next image. So let's go ahead and open up the photo bin and select that next image. Does the image look hazy? Well, yes, it does. So that's something we're going to fix right away. Looking at how the shadows, highlights, and midtones interact with each other, would an adjustment give more impact to the image? Well, it's hard to tell at this point, and it's something we'll look into for sure. But I want to clear up the rest of the haze before I go on to that. Okay, so let's go address that haze. We're going to do a new adjustment layer for levels. And we're going to address the haze by thinking about it as a desaturation caused by light diffusion. So when I think of it that way, I start to think, okay, I need to look at my colors and I need to look at this curve and levels with my colors specifically. So I'm going to go look at red, and I can see that my black shadows pointer is way off away from the start of my curve here. And so I want to bring that in. Now at first it looks a little odd. It makes it look a little green because that's the counterbalance to red here. But I'm going to do it for each color. And as I do it, you'll start to notice that as the colors get dialed in, the image itself starts to look a lot less hazy. So we're going to pull this back in, and it looks like the white pointer's just fine. And let's go down to blue. Okay, that looks pretty good. Okay, so let's close this for a second and play with the visibility here and take a look at the haze and what this adjustment did for our hazy sky. Okay, it definitely gave me more sharpness and took away the haze, but it also took away the warmth that was there already, but that was something I was going to address anyway. So we'll address that later when we address the colors. Okay, now I want to play just a little bit more with the highlights and the shadows and see how those are working together and if there's an adjustment I'd like to make overall. So I'm going to go ahead and double click this layer again. I'm going to make sure I go up to RGB and address all the colors at once for this particular adjustment. So I'm going to play around again with that mid-tone slider, and I don't like making it any lighter. However, making it a little darker again adds just a little bit of clarity to it, sharpens it up a bit, and actually makes these colors seem a little truer. Also, I reveal just a tad bit more in my sky. Okay, but do I give up anything in terms of the brightness and exposure? Maybe I can brighten it up a little bit. No. How about if I drag this in just a bit and drag the midtones back up a bit? All right. Okay, that looks pretty good to me. I really like the clarity, and I can see the sun now coming through in different pieces, in different areas. So I think I'm going to stick with this correction. Call it good. And moving on to the next image here. Same set of questions. Does it look hazy? No, it doesn't. It looks pretty good, actually. Looking at how the shadows and highlights and midtones interact with each other, would an adjustment give more impact to the image? Possibly. One of the things I might try, though, first is, would a selective adjustment in levels illuminate the subject better? Might want to brighten this up a bit while leaving the background the way it is. So let's go ahead and try that first. New adjustment layer for levels. Whenever I think of levels, or sorry, lighting, I think of levels. That's usually the place to start for adjusting the light. Let's go ahead and pull this in for all of the colors here and the entire image. Okay, yeah, I do like bringing it right to the start there of the curve. Okay, now thinking just about this piece of it right here, let's play with that midtone slider and see if I lose any detail by doing that. Well, I get a little bit more of the red, so the colors come out a little bit better, but I'm not sure I like what I lose in terms of the green and the grunge. So when I make my selective adjustment, I think I'll focus just on the red. Okay, leave it there, go up to the mask, Command or Control I to invert it. We have our brush already selected and white already selected, so we're just going to reduce the size of our brush by pressing the left bracket key. Kind of paint in our adjustments right there. Just bringing a little bit more light to that red roof. Reveals just a bit of detail too. Okay, so very subtle difference, but I like the effect of it. In fact, I think I'm going to brighten up the windows up here just a bit, because I kind of like how that kind of a happy accident there. I'm wondering if just a bit right in here would help. Yeah. I don't want to go too far. So if I've made a mistake, I switch colors so I have black and I can paint it out there what I don't like. I'm thinking the way the sun is hitting it, it wouldn't go all the way around. So I'm thinking, you know, making it look a little bit more realistic there. Swap colors again, so I've got white again, and I'm thinking, I wonder if I went down this edge, add just a sort of a hint of a little more depth there with the sun again. I'm kind of playing with this a little bit, sort of like I'm painting, and I'm kind of liking the effect. So this is totally based on personal preference and what you think about it. I'm kind of thinking maybe this would be the same. And maybe some of these pieces too. Just to add a little bit more depth to this painting overall. Make it seem even larger and more alive. Okay. Now I want to play with the visibility and decide if I really like this change or not. Gosh, I kind of do. Okay. Same rule applies though. I like to dial down any selective adjustments to 30 so that they're just a subtle bit of light. Oh yeah, definitely like that. Okay, and what do I think about this overall? I'm pretty sure that I don't want to make changements to the levels overall, but let's go ahead and take a peek. Yeah, I think it just changes too much of it. So I don't really want to do that. So nope, I'm not going to do this adjustment. I'm going to grab that and toss it into the trash. All right, and we're done with this set of questions for these images. And we can move on to the next set.